Welcome back to another episode of the Galaxie Project, where we are working on restoring my 1959 Ford Galaxie. If you don't know the backstory behind this, check out episode 1 where we go a little bit more in depth. But long story short, this sat in a garage for more than 30 years, including through a flood. It was actually my brother-in-law's grandparents' car. They bought it new in 1959. And we're in the process of trying to get it back on the road, like I said, after more than 30 years. This episode is all about the doors. So there's a couple issues that we have with the doors. One, there's something wrong with this window. It does roll up and down, but not very well. So we need to figure out what exactly is going on with it and why it keeps getting stuck. And then, you'll be happy to know I'm taking the David Freiberger advice of don't get it right, just get it running too hard. And by that, I mean just tossing it right out the window. Because apparently that's something I am completely incapable of. So we are going to start making door cards, but we're also going to have to modify the doors to fit some 5 1/4 inch speakers. Because reasons. No, actually I just really want a nice sound system in this. And what was the existing sound system was lacking probably in the best of times, but now it's it's rough. So we are gonna basically completely redo that, and the start is, like I said, adding some 5 1/4 inch door speakers. First though is figuring out what's going on with this window, and trying to figure out why it sometimes rolls up and down and other times just gets stuck. Alright, so the main issue we're having is it looks like it goes up and down, but the window rocks, and it doesn't actually go into where it should, and then if it does, it gets stuck. So it's looking like it might have something to do with this thing right back here, this guide. So we're going to take it apart and see exactly what's going on with it. Alright, well, this is the issue. So this is a little kind of adjustable bumper that actually sits right underneath here, and that limits how far the window can go up. And because it was just basically falling apart and not adjusted correctly, it was letting the window go around it and then not get stuck on the top and not allow it to come back down. So we at least figured out what it is. I have no idea if I can get a part for this. I'm assuming not, which means we're probably going to have to have 3D printing come to the rescue yet again, which there's nothing wrong with it, but slightly inconvenient. So, we at least know why the window wasn't working. Now we just need to figure out exactly how to fix it. Once that is corrected, the whole window mechanism actually moves quite freely. So, in a shocking twist to nobody, we could not come up with a new bumper or stop, whatever it is, for this window. What we did come up with is this. If it looks very similar to the material that we used for the bushings, it's because it's the same thing. So it's that flexible filament. We took the original bolt that has a really wide flat head and RTV'd it into the middle of this TPU. And now that is going to be our new stop, bumper, whatever it is. So now we just need to install this, that I can hopefully get back in. Come on. Come on. Nailed it. We also had to cut in a new notch for the screwdriver because it broke off. I know, that's also shocking. No, it's not. It's nothing surprising about that. So, before we tighten it down, moment of truth. Does it roll up and get caught? Wrong way. No, it does a really good job. Alright, and now I have a door that rolls up and down and seems to be fairly close to the right amount. Once I get all seals and everything in here, I'll have to go through and kind of rethink how these are adjusted. But for now, it's at least a starting point and better than it was. So one more thing on this really old car, fixed with actually shockingly modern technology. aka 3D printing. Here we have the door card, and you can see just how terrible it is. We are going to try and reuse the armrest. They actually seem to be in decent shape, and that's not a shape I can easily recreate with what I have on hand. Best option if I wanted to recreate it would be probably 3D printing, but hopefully we can save these because they are kind of cool. They've got the door handle here and this trim ring. But for figuring out where a speaker goes, you can see I put marks on this lower trim piece, and so we do have a lot of room right here, and that would actually probably look pretty good. But we also have a lot kind of here or back here. They do start getting into more of the armrest area, so it may not be the best choice, but at least now it gives me something to play with to where I can kind of look at it and figure out and try and find the best area. So after a lot of measuring and finding something in my shop that is roughly the same diameter as not just what the speaker is, but what the speaker grill would be, which is a 6-inch cutting disc, it's going to go right about here. So what that means is that we can easily have this trim piece, because I did get it stuff for the bottom trim piece, can go around that. We can find something to do up here that'll kind of tie everything together, and it's far enough out of the way to where we aren't getting in the way of hopefully any of the mechanisms, but also the seat as well. So it should actually be more of a kick panel speaker, because there's no kick panel. So that's what the plan is now. We get rid of the super crusty door panel. If we center this right about that mark, we end up with our speaker right about there. So what that means is we're out of the way of this trim piece. The mechanism's back here and up here, so we're out of the way of all of that. So whatever hole size that we have to end up cutting is going to be well away from anything to do with the door. The next step is to figure out what size hole we actually need to cut with the speakers, and then cut the hole, but also find a way to work out the mount, which might just be adding a ring here directly to the door with some riv nuts, so that way it's super easy to remove the speaker and there's nothing really getting in the way. We should also have enough room to put one of the speaker surrounds in there, the foam ones or 3D print one if we need to give a little bit better sound, and there should be plenty of room for making sure that we have a bass blocker in there to get that nice and out of the way of all the window mechanism as well. There are benefits to this car being huge. Well, now that we know where the speakers are going and that they're going to work with not only the door cards and the armrests, but also with the doors themselves, it's time to start taking this apart and try and figure out exactly what we need to do, because I want to save the armrest and this little trim ring. The rest of it is either not going to work because we have a speaker, or it's just too far gone to even bother worrying about. But I think I can save the armrest, which will still be kind of a cool nod to the original, even though we're going to be changing some of the door itself. So there is the trim ring that came off in very good shape. It is just super dirty. See, it's actually there and shiny. That's awesome. Now we just need to get this piece out. All right, and this is a piece that we are wanting to keep. That actually looks way more decent than it probably should. Still fragile as hell. All right, already looking way better. Definitely going to take some more cleaning. But if this is the worst one, that's very promising for the others. As long as the wood cardboard on the back stays intact, that's kind of the important part. I have a couple things I might try to try and make this actually last longer. But we're going to try it on a door card first to see what happens. As I take the back panels apart, you'll notice that there's actually another formed panel on one side of the back seat panels. That will be saved just in case I need it. I don't know if I will or not because I haven't tried fitting these because, again, these are too warped, much like the front. But I'll save it, pull it off, and that way I'll have this one as well. Also, if you look at how pringled these are, you'll know that these are not in good shape either, so they're also beyond using. now have the old door cards taken apart and the armrest removed, the next step is to start making our new ones. To do that, we're actually going to use aluminum instead of this cardboard stuff. Because the cardboard stuff, if it looks at water, it ends up warping all to hell, and I don't want to mess with it. So, we're going to use aluminum. Now, the original door cards, even though you can kind of sort of squish them flat, are essentially too far gone to really do anything with. What we can use them for, though, is enough of a template to at least get started. So we can force them flat-ish, and we'll know where the window cranks need to be, and the door handle, and where roughly the cutout is for the armrest. But for the outside shape, we're going to leave extra room, so that way we can trim as needed. So that's what we're going to do right now, is line this up just a little bit inside of the edge of the aluminum, because again, we're making it bigger and we can trim it down later. And then we're going to kind of squish it flat, at least as flat as we can, and try and get some rough shape. But we're going to add probably 1/2 inch to 1 inch, because again, we can make it smaller. We have the technology. We're also going to put a mark right along here on the off chance that it's close enough. I seriously doubt it, but we're gonna do it anyways. Well, now that we have everything traced out, the next step is to actually get this cut out. We've got the outer line that we're going to cut to, and we've got where we trace the door card. That's probably not quite accurate because it's all warped to hell. But we've at least got a starting point, so to the bandsaw. Alright, so it's rough cut, so we know it's too big, but it actually looks like we're pretty close. The holes for the windows and the doors actually line up pretty good. And so I think what we're going to do is mark a better line up here that's straight, and then probably trim this part off, give or take a little bit. And that should actually get us really, really close. We're still going to be cutting on the outside, just because it's way easier to cut material than it is to add it back. This is going to be covered in vinyl, so the actual holes don't matter too terribly much, but we want it to look nice. We don't want it to cut the vinyl over time, so we do want it to be close and smooth, which is not what we have right now, but that's not really what we need. Well, here we have the first fit of the door card with the cutout for the armrest and the armrest itself, along with the actual handle. So we've got the cutout for the window crank, the door latch, the original armrest. So this is the original armrest from this car, from the original door card. So we know that fits. It's not held in place by anything, except for the one screw in the armrest. So it will fit flat once we get holes for all of the clips installed or cut into the door card and then those installed. But we're making really good progress, and you can see how it's going to look fairly original, ish. More of like a resto mod thing. So the original door card was, the top half was gold, the bottom half was black vinyl, and there are some metal trim pieces in the middle, and then one that goes all along the bottom. So we are still going to have those or something similar to it. I can't find the exact stuff, so we're going to make some aluminum panels that fit underneath the trim ring that we still need to drill those holes for, and then one that goes along the bottom on top of the vinyl. But ours is going to have a cutout and a trim ring around where the door speaker is going to go, because, you know, reasons. So, speaking of door speakers, that's actually the thing that we're going to start working on next. Speaking of doors, speakers, no pun intended, that is actually what we're going to work on next. I've got a location of where I want them, and I was able to 3D print up some stuff, one of which is a locating jig to make sure that we get it where we want, and then a dummy speaker to make sure that everything that we cut is large enough and it actually fits. So that's what we're going to work on now. So we marked out the speaker location on the door card, and then transferred it over to the actual door itself. And now we have this sitting on the door. This is a 3D printed template. This inner circle is the hole that we need to cut in the door, and it's got a ledge on it. What's the ledge for? Well, it is actually for an inclinometer, because I can do this, zero it to the bottom of the door, and then I can stick that up here. Make the noise. And so now, this circle is exactly where we need it, because remember I drilled that hole all the way through. And we can now mark out where we need to cut the door out, as well as mark a couple of the speaker mounting holes. We aren't going to need those, but what we are going to need to do is use them kind of for a reference for the next step, which is we're going to have to build some sort of a speaker mount, because the door sinks in right here. There's nothing back there that we need to worry about, at least over here, but we do, however, the door decides to not close on me. Stay. What we do, however, need to do, though, is find a flat place to mount the speaker. That gap isn't going to work so well, so we're going to have to build something to fill in that gap. is the speaker mount. So like I said, it is a flat plate that's going to be here with welded nuts to the back side that we mount the actual speaker to, that is then welded to the door. And then also it's going to be a rolled cylinder that's going to help seal up this and give a little bit of strength to that mount for the side that's not actually up against the door. But that cylinder is actually going to serve two purposes. One is the actual mount, but the other part is we're going to make it about 3.5 inches deep, and then we're going to 3D print a TPU cap, the flexible filament, that goes on the back side. And that's going to create kind of a baffle of sorts. So it might improve the sound a tiny bit, but the biggest thing is that it's going to help protect it from the elements, because anyone that owns an old car knows that they are hygroscopic. And water and electronics, especially speakers, really don't mix. Look at the old speaker, for example. And I really like these speakers. So, in an effort to increase their longevity as much as possible, we're going to try and protect them as best we can, at least. So, now that we have a plan for what we're going to do, the first step is to actually cut out the strips that we're going to roll to make that cylinder. Now that we have our tube made and the hole cut out that fits this, the next step is to work on the mounting ring that we're going to weld to here, and that will then get welded to the door. That's our actual speaker mount. So to do that, I've got it designed up in CAD, so we're heading on over to the plasma table. Now that we have the main part of the speaker mount welded together, the next step is to close off this backside to help with keeping it waterproof. To do that, we have this metal disc, which is actually the middle part of this mounting ring from when we cut it out on the plasma table, and this 3D printed ring. This is made out of that flexible filament material. So, disc fits right in here, and then this whole assembly fits on the back. The reason that we did this as opposed to making the whole thing 3D printed was it just uses way less filament, and I already had that. Literally, it was just a piece of scrap left over, so I might as well use it for something. To seal that up, we've got some good old ultra black RTV, and that's how this is all going to get held together. The big question is, are we going to make a mess? And the answer is probably. Now that we have probably way too much RTV on there, perfect. Let's see if we can get this together without it being a complete disaster. Alright, and I'm not moving it because I don't want that to come apart, but now we have one assembled speaker mount. Full disclosure, this is actually the second one, because the first one really and truly was a disaster. I just made a giant mess. Nailed it. So this one actually went way better. It's almost like I, learned from the first time. Well, after a little bit of welding and some paint, we basically end up with this. So this is our new speaker mount. We are going to have to drill a couple holes in it. One probably isn't needed. We're going to drill a small drain hole in it. This is supposed to be sealed. We still need to seal around the outside, but it should be sealed. Just in case it's not, because 50s car, we're going to drill a small drain hole in the bottom. And then we also need to drill one more hole for a grommet so we can get the wires out. So, have to do a little bit of cleanup on this, where we're going to be welding it, and drill those holes, and then it'll be ready for installing. Before then, though, have to do a little bit of prep work on the door. The first thing is sand. Need to vacuum it out for like the 9th time. The other thing that we're going to do is that I got some off-brand sound deadening material. So we are going to try and install at least some of that inside the door. Obviously, we won't be able to do the whole door because I can't get to it all. But I want to install at least what I can to try and help with making the car quieter. This is not actually to make the stereo sound better. It's just to quiet the car down because it's a giant tin can. Emphasis on giant. It's huge for a 2-door car. Come on. So that's what we're going to actually work on next. I haven't done this since the college days. The original factory armrests, while really cool, has raised some potential issues. The big one is it's still made out of that same cardboard material that the old door panels were, that warped and just basically disintegrated. These are actually in good shape, but you can see that they are showing a little bit of not only their age and use, but also effects from the water. So what we want to do is we want to try and stop that from getting worse, which is replacing all the seals. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to try and reinforce these. And to do that, we're going to use some fiberglass and fiberglass resin to, first of all, we're going to make an entire border around here because that is the kind of the mounting surface that mounts this to the door card. And then we really need to reinforce around where this is. This is where the handle goes. And so while the metal piece does in fact bolt directly to the door, it's the little tab that sticks out that I always hit my head on and run into. We want to make sure that if this does get used as an armrest, or if someone puts their hand on it crawling out of the back seat, that it just doesn't disintegrate. So we're also going to reinforce all of the middle of it. Tried this first on the door cards to make sure that the cardboard didn't react negatively, or at least get worse than what it already was, and it didn't. And then I did it on one of the back seat ones, because if I was going to lose an armrest and not have an armrest in the back seat, I would much prefer that over ruining one of the front door ones. So did a couple tests, everything came out fine. So now we're going to start cleaning this up, because it does still have dirt and stuff from the flood. So we have a nice surface to bond to, and then mix up some fiberglass resin and at least get this flange reinforced so I can keep moving forward on the door card. The rest of this can come later if I need to, because I do want to get the door card done. Kind of show you guys what I've been up to for the last, I don't know, month and a half since the heater box is, it's still over there because it's not going well. So trying to get this done so you guys can at least see some progress. So kind of leaving my options open as far as that goes. But for now, let's get started on cleaning this up. So I'm going to move you guys a little bit so you get a nice time-lapse view. And then I'm going to start cleaning this up and mixing some resin and attaching some fiberglass. So a quick reminder, while I am doing this for reinforcement, this is not the correct way to actually do fiberglass, like for structural fiberglass. This is just to be better than it is because at the end of the day, it's still being attached to cardboard, which is in itself a composite that the resin is going to soak into. So it's for reinforcement. It's not meant to be super structural. So that's why I'm not doing it as good as it should be. Alright, so once this is fully cured, I'll be able to start working on the door card again once we drill all these mounting holes. And then we'll go back to finish this when I'm waiting on something else to dry or have a little bit of downtime where I'm waiting on something. All that work, and we now have this inserted into the door. So the next step is to finally weld it and make it permanent. So got the MIG welder out. We're gonna weld these little tabs that are welded onto the mounting ring. We're gonna weld there, and then we're gonna put a bead right back here, and that should hold everything very securely in place to where we don't have to worry about it later. Hopefully. Sounds like a good plan, anyways. Well, as it turns out, even on a door that you don't think is has any issues, you can still find thin spots, which is also exacerbated by the fact there's a little bit big of a gap. But no one's ever going to see that, so I'm not too worried. Tack welded those tabs on, and it is actually really, really solid right now. So that's about all that I can ask for something that's getting hidden behind a door. If anyone sees this, something went wrong. So, with that out of the way, we have one speaker mount, so we can get back to working on the door card that will then fit to said speaker mount. I'm actually getting really kind of excited about it. So, let's get back to the door card and get working. I just shot some spray paint on the newly installed speaker mounts, so while that is drying, we're going to get back to working on the door cards. So the first thing I need to do is drill out the mounting holes, which, if you remember, is these little spikes. These go through the door card, through the armrest, and then bend over the back. So we need to drill out the mounting holes to make sure that they are clear, because we just put fiberglass over every single one of them. So that's step one. Step two is then to make sure it fits. Alright, so I might need to enlarge the holes just a little bit, but all the spikes fit. So that is actually pretty awesome. So now we just need to pull this back off and enlarge the holes, and then start working on transferring all of this to the door card. Now that I have this armrest very precariously clamped, we're going to try and at least get a few holes drilled into the door card so that we can temporarily bolt it together to mark the rest of them. So the hope is that I can put one over here, one over here, one over there, 2 or 3, something like that, that will line up good enough that then I can get a really small bolt through it and then drill all the others. I don't know how that's going to work, but we're going to try our best. Alright, so we don't have all the holes drilled, but this is the first time that the armrest has been mounted to this door card. So yeah, that's actually pretty sweet. So now, if that's dry, we're going to try and test fit it on the door, make sure that all the holes line up, because we want this done, because this is what attaches to the door, before we do something like drill out the speaker hole or drill out all the holes for the trim clips. Because this is what's going to dictate where everything is installed, and we don't want any sort of clashing or way too big of holes. I don't want to deal with that, so this is what we're going to try and do to avoid any of those issues. Well, we have the door speaker off. Basically, the final touch of the actual speaker mount itself, one of the two, is going to be putting in some sound deadening. The last one is we actually have a hole here that we're going to put a grommet in that'll let us run the wires through everything. But other than that, the last thing is putting in some sound deadening. So as long as we avoid that, we should be golden. Now I just need to pop in this little grommet for the wires to pass through without getting it stuck in the door. Well, with that grommet in place and the sound deadening, we are now done with the driver's side speaker mount. And now what we need to do is finish the door card for the armrest and all the trim clips, and we should be good to go to then start on the passenger side. In case you're wondering why this project's taking so long, it's because of this. Because I can't help myself. I also should not be trusted alone, up to my own devices. Because I do this. So, you've all been warned. I really hope it's not going to take as long as Project Binky. Please don't let it take as long as Project Binky. If anyone questions whether or not the 3D prints were accurate enough so that the speaker would actually fit, ta-da! Along with the door handle and window crank. Thank you very much. Once all locations are measured and marked for the door clips, the next step is to turn every one of them into a slot. Mark the slot out, drill 2 pilot holes, grab a bigger drill bit to drill the final size, and then file the material between the 2 holes. Pop in a trim clip, and ta-da, you are done. Then repeat that same process 9 more times, and you end up with a door card that can actually attach to the door. Well, as much as I'd like to say the door panel is done, other than being covered, that is not true. There are still these silver trim pieces that were on the original door cards. They look like this. With the original door card, they're actually seam welded vinyl, but that's not something that I have the ability to do. I don't have the machines or anything else that it would take to do that, so that's not going to happen on this door. What is going to happen is recreating that out of aluminum. That is something that I'm able to do. So we're going to keep basically the same shape for the part that goes around the armrest, except for continue it to the front, because there's also a seam weld between the 2 colors of vinyl. And again, since I can't do that, I'm just going to cover up the seam that I'm going to end up with. The next thing that we're going to do is use another piece of aluminum to make that bottom strip. It would be probably much easier if some idiot didn't cut a giant hole in the door for a speaker. Still worth it. But we have to decide if we're going to put the speaker in and just leave the trim more looking original and just modify the whole pattern, or if we're going to actually incorporate the speaker into the trim itself, and have the trim piece basically create a border around the speaker grill. I still have to figure out that, but in the meantime, we've got the centerpiece to do, and that we need to make a template from the original door card, and then transfer that to a piece of aluminum and this door panel. Hopefully it doesn't take too terribly long, but the way that this whole thing is going to take forever as well. So if you're wondering why the videos take so long for me to get out, it's because I do stuff like this. Don't worry, it's all self-inflicted, but we're going to start working on getting a template for the piece that goes around the armrest, and then just keep moving forward. So after a lot of back and forth with the design, on how to modify it to hide the front seam of the vinyl, this is the shape that I came up with. The back 3/4 is actually mostly the exact same as the original. It's only the front quarter that really changed. It'll hide that seam pretty well, and still kind of keeps the same vibe as the original door panel did. Still have to come up with the one for the bottom, but for now, this is what we're going to go with for the top. Might have to do a little bit of tweaking just on the angles of it, so I'm going to try and find this upper trim piece, set it on there, and make sure that at least it looks parallel to that trim piece to make sure that it looks good and correct. All right, well, we still have some more attaching to do. I need to get some studs that bond on the back side of this to hold it close. But this gives you a really good idea of just what this door is going to look like. This part will be white. This will be black. We still have that trim piece on the bottom to do. Like I said, still some glue-on studs that need to go on the back of this trim piece. But it's actually looking really, really good. I'm really excited about it. One thing you will notice is that both the front and back are left a little bit long. That is on purpose. Once we wrap vinyl around, I want to make sure that the edges look finished. So I have a little bit of a round over on the front. and I can make that bigger if I need to. And then this one, because you see it at the end of the door when the door is open, I want to try being the key word, to wrap that all the way around back behind the door card, to really not only hold it in place, but also give this edge a really finished look. So now that I have that done, time to work on the bottom piece. Just keeps going. Looks sick though. Alright, so now that we have this trim piece done, the next part is this little strip that goes along the bottom. So I took measurements from the old door, I'm going to transfer them onto here, and then we're going to use some green masking tape just to mark this out, to see exactly how we think it will look. Alright, so now that we have this line, which is really just a visual, I actually still really like this, and I think we're not going to go around the speaker. I think we're just going to leave it this height. That gives a pretty good look. If I grab my little speaker drill template, I think it's going to look pretty good as is, and I think it'd look weirder if we added some sort of a border around there. So I think we're just going to leave it as the strip along the bottom, but now I need to figure out what I'm going to do with it. Because the options are we could leave it plain, we could polish it, we could make some sort of a pattern. The original one had holes. I'm not actually sure if I want to do that. So I have to figure that part out. But to the very least, we know that we need a strip that is roughly 2 3/4 inches thick, that goes all the way across. So I got the last trim piece on this door cut. You'll notice I've got tabs front and rear. That is to do the exact same thing as I did on, or I'm going to do on the upper piece, which is fold those over for a nice clean look and to help hold the trim in place. I will still have glue and studs on the bottom as well as the top to help hold everything in place and give it a nice clean look. But anything I can do to help hold this in place other than just glue and screws, like, the more the better. Well, we got the final mock-up of the door, and that's also where we're going to end this episode. Everything except for the trim ring that goes around the armrest is on there. So you get a really good idea of how this door is going to look once it's all covered in vinyl, and I am actually really excited. Not going to cover it in vinyl yet because I've got a lot of work on the car, and I don't want it to get messed up in the meantime, but I think it looks pretty awesome. It's definitely been a lot of work and a long time coming, trying to get the speaker mount made, welded into the door, and then integrated with the trim and the door card itself. And the fact that I've had to do a lot of these pieces twice, because what I haven't showed you is I still have the other door to do. I have a lot of the pieces made and assemblies made, but none of them are installed, none of the holes are cut, so yay me. But while you guys are watching this episode, that's what I'm going to be working on. So hopefully you've enjoyed watching me overcomplicate stuff and make way more work for myself, or hopefully you've gotten some inspiration for your own project or learned something. If you want to keep following along, make sure to subscribe. You can find me on Instagram, also 86SVO. I'll post pictures and trying to be better about that. And then you can make sure you don't miss any progress on this car or my other project that I have going on, which is a 1986 Mazda B2000 drag and drive project. Hopefully there's more videos coming out on that soon. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you all later.